Hey guys, good morning or afternoon wherever you are. I just want to say a couple words about the Q2 again. Just a reminder that the one we did last week was considered one of the more challenging ones that I've ever seen. Usually what they do is they give you like an easier to read poem in a more difficult Q2 or a difficult poem in an easier to read Q2. So last week's Q2 in terms of readability I think was really difficult. Some of you, like the kids last year, got confused about which sister was which or what trait one sister had and what trait the other sister had. And hopefully you listened to my recording and saw my notes that, I think when you got confused, it was a matter of not annotating correctly. So, I really want to encourage you when you get ready to take the test in 2 weeks to remember two things. One, you can only have it open on one computer, and two, you can have two windows open. There's going to be one window that has the prompt with the passage on it, and that's also going to have your timer on it. And then they said you could open a second window with either Microsoft Word or Google Docs or Notepad or something like that if you want to type your essay. And like I said, if you're going to type it, I think your best bet is to print out the passage and annotate it. If you're not going to type it, I think you could have it on the computer screen. But remember, there's now no annotation tool to be used if it's on the screen. So you'll just have to look at the screen. I will also tell you that there's no cutting and pasting allowed. So if you have the two windows open, one with the passage and one where you're trying to type, you're not going to be able to cut and paste parts of the passage as you type. That would have been a strategy I might have tried to use, but it's not going to be possible because of the security of the browser. They want to make sure you guys are not taking screenshots of the passage and passing them on to other people or something. So just remember that. So you'll either be looking at the passage in handwriting with no ability to annotate on screen, or you can print it and handwrite it, or print it and also do Google. But things to think about in terms of how you want to structure your day. I'd also say that you should bring multiple pens. That's my belief, because if you are handwriting it, you definitely have to do it in pen. Um, but if you take a picture and it's in pencil and the reader can't see it, that's what I'm worried about. But if you're going to print it out and annotate it, I would definitely recommend having multiple pen colors or a pencil. Because what I've done here is kind of look at this passage and annotate it. I was looking at a website a minute ago where the teacher used the word, instead of saying concrete and abstract, he used identify the command that you're given. And the command that you're given here, I put in green. You're commanded to analyze the new situation. And I put the word new situation in blue because I felt like that was very literal, where they were sort of expecting you as just a basic concrete response is to say what the new situation is, which is that she moved from one location to another location. And if you scroll down in a minute, you'll see that I've highlighted a few words like overcast season, and I highlighted the asterisk that's down below where there's a footnote that says her grandmother was making a Caribbean dish. So I think we can safely say her situation is that she moved from the Caribbean to some place where the sun shines and it's cold. Um, and actually, if you scroll down all the way to the bottom and look at the copyright information, it tells you that most of her works were published in England, which would lead me to believe this is a narrative about a woman who moves from the Caribbean to England. Now, if you didn't piece that all together, that's okay. If you just said New England or just someplace different, that's fine too. But you needed to get the basic situation. There's a move. And then when we get to the higher level analysis, it was yellow. And then I would argue the 5-6 is what's purple. And the 5-6 is going to depend on how much detail you were able to explain the metaphor within the text. So to just talk about how it challenges the sense of self, I highlighted some stuff in yellow. Um, when you first read the passage, it seems like she's excited about riding in an elevator and eating refrigerated food, which again tells you this is probably set a few centuries previous to ours, because I think, in the Caribbean, people have refrigerators. Although I guess it's possible, some people still don't. But just looking at the copyright dates again, I would assume this is set sometime in the past. Um, so if you look at the yellow, she says she tried to smile, but didn't do like a real smile, like half smile where the corners are turned down. And then she explained that at night she slept soundly because her senses were kind of overwhelmed and she didn't want to take in anything else, meaning she didn't want to smell, see, or learn anything else, so she just would shut off at night. And if you look down, she says, the sun's different than what she was used to. She puts on a dress, but the dress and the sunlight seem wrong here. No one had ever told her about the climate there. And she suddenly realized she's no longer in a tropical zone. All of those things point to a 4 answer, which is the idea that she's uncomfortable in her new situation. And that would also be the 6th answer. She's uncomfortable in her body. When you get down saying, I wanted to go someplace else, I wanted to learn to be back in the place that I came from, those are all indicative of the fact that she's feeling uncomfortable and she wants to go back. She's feeling sad, she's feeling discontented, and she's longing for home. Okay, so that would be a 4 answer. Now, what a 6 answer would do is to look at the complexity of the argument a little bit. So, despite the fact that she's sad, she's also ironically intimidated by the things that were good. So, up here she says it was a good idea that I could imagine that I would grow used to it and like it very much. And she's smiling, but the complexity comes in, I think, where you have to look at this metaphor down here, that she starts to see her life like a ground that was formerly dry that's now in 2 banks. So there's the past and the future. So that would mean currently she's in the river, and being in the river or on the sea where she's surrounded by falling rain and overcastness would imply that during the present she's experiencing some confusion. And then if you skip down and you support this assertion, this sentence right here is probably the most complicated in the passage because of her use of now and then. But what she's saying is, now currently after I've immigrated, I felt I wanted to go back to where I came from. I understood it. I knew where I stood there, meaning like in the past. And then she said, if I had to draw a picture of my future in the past, but also my future, then at this moment, it would have been a large gray patch surrounded by black, black or blackest, meaning right now she feels like she is in her future and she is in gray, but in the future, it's going to be black, black or blackest, meaning like she's going to be able to see even less, and she's even currently more confused about what her future is going to be like than she was previously. Because she says to you later on that, when she was depressed before, the thought of being in my present situation had been a comfort. So previously, the idea of immigrating was comforting to her. But now that she's already immigrated and she sees how she's going to have to adjust to these different situations, and particularly this climate situation that she's so uncomfortable with. Like she said, I've never been so cold. I've never been so cold physically and internally. And what it makes her want to do is go back and live with her grandmother. And that's why this last symbol, I think, would be another key to getting like a 5 or 6, is talking about how the bowl of pink fish, mullet is a kind of fish, combined with green figs, coconut milk, is comforting to her. So the next thing I want to show you really quick is just to talk about the thesis point, and that's usually not a problem for you guys. Oops, I'm on the wrong screen, sorry. That's usually not a problem for you guys, but what I did here is give you 4 theses to argue about, and what I'd like for you to do is go down and argue about these in the comments, and argue, is this like a 1 or a 0? So pause this now and put your thoughts in, like A, 0, 1, B, 1, or whatever. And take a minute and maybe talk to them with your peers. And after that, come back and listen to what I had to say. Okay, so answer choice A is one that I get a lot as a reader, and it's one where you're just parroting back the prompt. And again, try not to do that. B is very much exactly the same. You gave me a little bit of the concrete answer, but again, you just repeated challenges her sense of self. And then again, with the C passage, you're getting closer to a 1 and a 0. So this is what we would call a borderline one. And people might be tempted to give this one a 1, but I think I would still give this one a 0 because I don't see any individual thought, any interpretation with that one. But the D one is pretty clearly a 1 because it says she's moved and it challenges her preconceptions. And again, there's still very little information there, so some of you may have been tempted to give that one a 0, but that one would still be a 1 because what you're getting to see is the word preconceptions is not in the prompt, and it more directly explains how she challenges her sense of self. Whereas, like with the C, it's just saying it challenges her to change, which is again just sort of rewording the prompt, whereas D is actually interpreting it. I have not scored your essays yet. So if you've already seen your score because you've waited a while to listen to this, that's fine. But the bottom line here is this one I think is going to be pretty easy to get a 3, 4, maybe even a 5 on. But I think getting the sophistication point would be difficult here. So what I did is kind of bullet out as an AP reader what I would be looking for to give you that sophistication point. I would be looking for these key points, although you could express them in your own words, or maybe there's even acceptable answers I haven't thought of yet. But I think you need a thesis that's something like the difference between expectation and the reality, wanted the narrator to be back at home where things are familiar, even if those familiar things frustrated and angered her. And I think in your mapping, either in your intro, if you had it all planned out, but if you didn't have it planned out in your mapping, just in the course of your essay, you needed to bring up the ideas that, while she didn't enjoy new conveniences like the refrigerator and the elevator, other things like the climate and the change of clothing made her want to go home because they made her feel confused. They made her feel sort of lost, and led her not to know what to expect. And those made her long for familiar things. And some of you guys have asked me about like themes. Should you have a theme in there? And my answer is no, it's not mandatory as long as you answer the question. But sometimes if you want the 6 and you've got 2 or 3 sentences left, time to write 2 or 3 sentences, connecting that character back to a way that human beings in general behave is not a bad idea. Listen, sometimes you can't, so don't kill yourself if you can't. But if there's that moment at the end, you got a couple more minutes and you want to throw in something, and again, you can wait all the way till the end. This is not a Q3. You don't have to know it at the beginning. But at the end in that last paragraph in your concluding sentence, if you want to say the narrator's attitude helps understand the common behavior that for most people, change is a challenge and it makes people feel displaced and confused. And I think that that's something that we can all understand right now. The last thing I wanted to bring up real quick is the fact that when I did analyze this online, what I actually saw was in AP Central, this is the prompt that they had posted. But when I Googled this and did a bunch of research and I found it currently posted on the AP site, this is what I saw. The following excerpt is from the novel Lucy by Caribbean-American author Jamaica Kincaid, published in 1990. In this passage, the narrator describes the beginning of a new phase in her life. Read the passage carefully, then in a well-written essay, analyze how Kincaid uses literary elements and techniques to portray the complexity of the author's new situation. So it's really interesting. If you look at the old essay, they said talk about detail, metaphor, and tone. That's completely gone in this one. So I just wanted to show you that, honestly, their intent is the same. They took out this list of devices because they were worried it limits students to feeling like they have to discuss those. So don't be surprised next week if that's not there. Then the other thing, so they replace it with literary elements and techniques, but we know those are techniques of figurative language and elements of style that are from our packet, which are represented here like selection of detail, tone, metaphor, right? So, and then this one, they kind of state that she's beginning a new phase in her life. So they didn't ask you to identify it like they did up here. They didn't say, explain how the new situation challenges her. They just said, oh, she has a new situation. And then they said, analyze how literary elements portray the complexity of the new situation. So it's weird. They took it away from saying, oh, what's her sense of self, to saying, what's her new situation. So it's weird that they must have decided this previous one wasn't worded the way they wanted it to be, and they changed it to this. So this would be reflective of the new direction they're taking the exam in, as opposed to this one. I don't know which one you guys would find more clear. I actually think this one is a little more clear to me because it's allowing you to write about whatever you want. And I actually think saying it challenges her sense of self could be a little bit vague for some students. So I think saying describe the complexity of her new situation is a little bit easier. But again, it goes back to the use of that word complexity that you've seen them throw in throughout this whole year. And the thing that I just want to reiterate with them adding that word complexity here now means you have to talk about her two responses to the new situation, which would make that first paragraph and the fact that she's kind of excited at first even more crucial to bring up. Because if you have to talk about her situation as complex, like it excites her that she's England, but it also frustrates her because the things she's encountering are unusual, and the fact that home represents comfort to her, but also like a source of like anger and frustration. Bringing up those contrasts now is going to be doubly important. And since they revised this old one to this new one where they mention their complexity, that leads me to believe that that's something that's going to be on the test this year. So, all right, hope that was not too long and you don't regret this loss of your hours that you'll never get back. Anyway, see you guys Thursday and Friday. Bye.